He was a dream, the future, or so I thought. But my love was cursed right from the start. Sounds a bit confusing, right? Let me explain. But first, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Carolyn. I was a dreamer. I dreamed of a good, warm, stable, successful life. I wanted a good job. And I wanted to travel around the world a bit with Helen. She was my best friend. We virtually shared the same dreams, and hobbies, and interests, and lifestyles. We've been friends since we were kids. People often thought that we were sisters. I did too, in fact. She even got jealous if anyone tried to get close to me. Every day, Helen and I worked a little more towards our dreams. Once, when Helen and I were traveling with some of our friends, we had a problem with the hostess on the plane. A gentleman intervened and cleverly solved our problems. His name was Danny. I liked him. A lot. I thought about him often. But whenever I talked to Helen about him, she told me that he was not as amazing as I seemed to think he was. Coincidentally, I met him again at a party of a mutual friend. We talked together till daylight. I told Helen about our encounter, and she expressed her wishes that my love story would have a happy ending. I similarly told her that I hoped she would find the love of her life someday too. Everything would be okay, we figured. Then, one day, I received a letter in our mailbox. It was in weird handwriting, as if the writer had written it with a trembling hand. I opened it curiously. It said that my love for Danny would become a curse if I didn't give him up and get him out of my life. What nonsense, I thought. Whose idea of a silly joke was this? I immediately called Danny and Helen to tell them about the letter. Danny laughed, but Helen was worried and suggested that I should be careful from now on. That same day, Danny had a horrible car accident, but fortunately he wasn't hurt. A detective investigating the case determined that his car brakes had been tampered with. In another incident, a car almost hit me, but it swerved away at the last minute. When I mentioned this incident to Danny, he tried to calm me down and told me to just forget about it. He gave me a beautiful bracelet as a present and proposed. We got engaged, and I couldn't have been happier. I wanted to show the bracelet to Helen, but somehow I seemed to have lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere. Anyway, when I told Helen about his proposal, she was thrilled for me. I spent days shopping for just the right wedding dress. I was so busy with preparations that I forgot all about the ominous letter. I went to the wedding hall early to make sure that everything was ready and prepared. Helen was helping me, and Danny kept calling me to make sure I was all right. Suddenly, the lights went out. I called out to Helen, worried that she might have tripped and fallen when the lights were out. When the lights came back on, Helen had fainted, and my dress had disappeared. I screamed to the ceiling, "What do you want from me? Leave me alone!" Suddenly, Danny appeared out of nowhere and asked me what had happened. I told him then and there that we must break off our engagement, otherwise the curse the letter mentioned might injure someone or cause someone to die. Then Helen came to and tried to calm me down. She told me to go to the car and that she would get our stuff and follow me. I loved Danny and wanted to marry him, but now I was seriously worried that this curse threat might actually be real. Helen came back carrying a bag and a large suitcase and told Danny not to worry, that she would drive me home and then call him to tell him that we had arrived safely. I was still crying, and Helen was trying to calm me down. When we arrived home, I noticed something strange. Helen was carrying a bag that was partially open, and I glimpsed a piece of clothing stuffed into it. It looked exactly like my dress. I opened the bag and found that it was my dress. I confronted Helen and demanded to know how my missing dress ended up in her bag. I clearly caught her red-handed, and she was unable to answer coherently. I realized at that moment that the source of the so-called curse was Helen. "Helen," I said, "how dare you do this to me? I thought we were like sisters to each other." She replied icily, with a glare that I saw for the first time. She said that she fell in love with Danny just as I did, but he chose me instead of her, and that she hated me for it. She said she won him over and got him to love her instead. Then they both tried to scare me into calling off the wedding so that she and Danny could be together. There are no words to describe how I felt at the time. I replied in a similar tone. I told her that I don't ever want to see her again, or Danny. Neither of them mattered anymore. I never did see Helen or Danny after that day. I'm on a Caribbean island now, sipping on a cocktail. I read in the paper that Danny and Helen had announced their engagement. I'm thinking about what wedding present I should give them as a surprise.
Falling in love with a knight in shining armor riding on a white stallion is the dream of every girl. I would want him to be tall, blonde-haired, green-eyed, handsome, and strong. Imagine him along with me if you can. But what I never expected in a million years was to actually meet my knight in shining armor. Lend me your ear and listen to my knight's tale. My name is Meredith, and I am 17 years old. I live with my mom and my little sister Susan, who is 3 years younger than me. Susan and I fight a lot, as sisters are wont to do. She is more beautiful than me. I am short and fat, but don't blame me. You should blame my mother for being an excellent cook. She used to work in a famous restaurant. You can't imagine how tasty her food is. Mom uses me as her laboratory rat or guinea pig. Whenever she cooks any new dish, she has me try it out and give her my opinion. As a result of all my taste testing, I've become an obese food addict. I know that my obesity may be an obstacle in finding my heroic knight. My best friends are Ellen, Selena, and Mary. My first date was with a guy named Mark. He was a crazy one. Torn clothes, long, dirty hair, a furtive manner. And his paranoid eyes were always darting around, looking everywhere. At our first meeting, he gave me a silly present that, when open, sprang a fake frying pan into my face. My next meeting was with Michael. He was subdued and weird. On our first date, he sat silent for 2 hours and barely spoke at all. All my friends' matchmaking attempts failed miserably. Then Ellen suggested that I open a Facebook account and try to find my dream mate online. I didn't like the idea at first, but I took a chance, opened an account, and shared some personal information about myself and my interests. My first friend request was from Mark. Yeah, that Mark. I blocked his request immediately. I received more friend requests from various people, some interesting, some plain and boring. I kept waiting for my knight on a white horse to send me a friend request. Then one day, I got a friend request from a boy named Joaquin. I visited his Facebook page and saw that he was handsome and active in sports. I accepted his request and sent him a message to say hello and waited all night for his response. Just when I was about to lose hope, he surprised me and responded. I tried to control myself even though my mind was already racing ahead and planning our wedding. We chatted online that day for around 3 hours. I told him about my family, hobbies, etc. But eventually he had to excuse himself to go to an exercise class. However, he promised that he would continue our chat later. I sent him a rolling on the floor laughing emoji and asked, "Are you serious?" He replied, "Of course, I want to get to know you better." I called my friends and told them everything. They advised caution, but I didn't listen to them. In my mind, I had already fallen in love with Joaquin. I clutched my phone, waiting for his next message with bated breath. I figured that I should probably let him know what I really looked like, a fat food addict, before we got too far into a relationship. When he got home, he sent me a message, and I asked him about himself and his family. He told me about his dreams, his family, and his dream girl. He told me that he wasn't interested in a girl's figure at all. The important thing was her character. We agreed to meet the next day. I was excited. I called my friends immediately and update them on my news. Later, I received a message from Joaquin stating the time and place of our upcoming meeting. I chose some chic clothes and got ready to go. Mom saw me and was surprised that I had dressed up so. Susan laughed at me. "She looks like she's going to a restaurant," said my darling little sister. I announced, "I am going on a date, Mum. I met someone on Facebook." Mum said, "Okay, have a good time, and come back and tell us all about it when you return." My heart was beating in my ears as I raced to our meeting place. After I arrived, I sent Joaquin a message telling him that I was waiting for him outside. He replied that he had prepared a surprise for me and that I should come inside. So I hurried inside to see what surprise he had planned. My mind ran wild with possibilities. When I entered the place, I saw my friends holding up a banner with my name on it. Ellen said, "Don't be upset, Meredith, but your surprise is that we are Joaquin." They had played a prank on me as a birthday surprise. Oh, I was so angry. Do you mean to tell me that Joaquin, the love of my life, was all a hoax? You are not my friends. You are devils. But then Ellen opened a box and showed me its contents. A nice, big, plump, glazed blueberry tart. I stopped my angry ranting. My mouth closed. I became silent and calmed down. My heartbeat rate slowed. They all hugged me. They said that I was a beautiful girl, and they had just wanted to make me happy for my birthday. I was stuffing the blueberry tart in my mouth when the waiter came to take our orders. I looked at him with a mouthful of food. He was so handsome. I mumbled, "What's your name?" as I was chewing my mouthful of blueberry tart. Try again, as they say.